Hi, my name is Carson Lee, and I just recently finished my first manuscript. So excited. This is my book. It's actually 3/4 of my book. The rest of it isn't printed out yet and wouldn't fit in this anyway. But I wanted to make a YouTube channel so I could document the editing process and hopefully the publishing process of my first book. Super excited. So I thought the first video that I should film to introduce you to my novel and a little bit to me as well is the work in progress tag. So please excuse me if I'm looking down at my lap. I have all of my questions and answers written in my notebook. So the first question is, what is the working title of your book? And my book is called Valor. It has been called Valor for a very long time, although I did go through a couple of other names. But I love Valor. I think it's beautiful. I love the lettering, and I don't see myself changing it in the future. The second question is, where did the idea come from for your book? So, in my senior year of high school, I'm a sophomore, going to be a junior in college now, and in the senior year of high school, my school had this project called a Senior Experience Project, and you could do whatever you wanted for it, but I decided to write a novel. And I tried to write a couple of novels, different ideas, and nothing was sticking. So I was in class one day, and I'm a chronic doodler. I was doodling on the back of an assignment. I wish I still had the assignment now. And I was drawing almost like a treasure map. Just bored, probably in a science class. I'm not a science person. But I ended up doodling this map for 56 minutes or however long my period for that class was, and at the end I thought, wow, this would make a really cool story. So I started it then, so midway through my senior year, and I just recently finished it. But that's kind of where the idea came from, was from this little doodled treasure map from my science class. The third question is, what genre does your book fall under? My book is historical fiction. Valor is historical fiction. The fourth question is, what actors would I choose to play my characters in a movie rendition? And this is so difficult because I have a relatively large cast of characters in my book, and I think it's hard to pick an actor for them when I've spent so much time with them. I know their mannerisms, I wrote their mannerisms, I created them, and I would want somebody to accurately represent what I think my characters are like. So I don't really have any actors that I would choose for my characters because I would want to see them audition or try to play my characters before I could pick anybody. I do have a Pinterest board full of inspiration for each character, as well as for settings and things like that, and I could do a video on that later if that's something that somebody would want. The fifth question is, what is a one-sentence synopsis of your book? And oh my goodness, this was hard to write. Valor, printed out, is about 500 pages, 530 pages, somewhere around that. It is a behemoth of a book. It is way longer than I ever thought it would be, so condensing that down to one sentence was almost impossible. And I'm not saying that this is the end-all, be-all, one-sentence synopsis for this book. I'm sure I could have come up with something better if I had spent a longer amount of time on it, but here it goes. A group of warriors set out on a journey to end a feud started by their king in his youth, while also fulfilling their own personal missions amidst the sickness, death, and surprises that they encounter on their quest. That was a long-winded sentence, but that's probably the best I could do for a one-sentence synopsis at this point. Maybe I'll try it again later when I'm feeling a little more confident and willing to sit down and rework it over and over again. The sixth question is, will your book be self-published or represented by an agency? I would like to be traditionally published, and I have nothing against self-published authors. I think they are amazing for the work that they do, but I know myself, I'm going to be a junior in college, and I'm not saying that my book will be published anytime soon by any means. I know that it's a long and hard road to be traditionally published, to get a literary agent, and then to have a publisher pick up your book. But I think that that's the road that I need to go on, just because I know myself, and I know that I personally would not be able to do all of the work that a self-published author has to do. I would much rather work with professionals in their individual fields And I know that that means giving up some control over certain things, but that's a trade that right now I'm willing to make. The 7th question is, how long did it take you to write the first draft of your manuscript? 2.5 years. I definitely didn't want it to take 2.5 years, but it took 2.5 years. I just recently finished it this summer, and it's the July in between my sophomore year of college and my junior year of college, and I started it my senior year of high school. So 2.5 years. I basically grew up with this book. The 8th question is, what other books would you compare yours to within the same genre? I don't think I can really compare it to other books, not because I'm saying my book is completely original by any means, but I think it's hard as the author to make comparisons because you don't ever want to purposely write a book that has already been written to copy the work of some other individual, because you want to be creative and have your own work. So it's hard for me to say that my book is like another book or similar to another book, but I can say that I was inspired by certain books. I'm a minor in medieval studies, so I study the Middle Ages. That's my comfort zone. I love that kind of history and that writing, all of that. I'm an English history double major with a minor in medieval studies and a concentration in creative writing, which seems like a lot, but they all coincide so beautifully. It's really nice that my college supports that and lets me do that and has classes that let me learn the kinds of things I want to learn. So I was inspired a lot by medieval literature, by the Prose Edda, which you can read. It's by Snorri Sturluson, an Icelandic author, and it's telling the Norse legends. My story is about Vikings, about Scandinavia and Vikings. So that is as primary of a source that you can get. So I read that for a class, and I was really inspired by that for a lot of the myths and legends in my story, as well as the Odyssey by Homer, Beowulf. Those are all epic stories, and I really wanted to write almost a modern epic where I have many characters and they're traveling over land where there are wars and battles and fantastical things, because I think it's amazing that books can take you out of the world that you live in and can transport you to a different world. That's what I wanted my book to do, and I hope that that's what Valor will do for readers when it's finally finished and in the hands of a reader. I think I was also inspired, not directly, but sort of, by Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. If you've read it instead of seeing the TV show, even if you've seen the TV show, he focuses on a whole bunch of different characters. Now, my cast, there are 6 main characters, but there are a whole bunch of other side characters that you get to hear from, not directly because I write in 3rd person omniscient, so I don't write in 1st person. I don't switch POVs, but you get to hear from them and you get to see what they're doing throughout the story, even though they're not directly with my main cast of characters that are going on the quest. And I really wanted Valor to have this sense that the world that you're in, even though it is our world, it's not a fantasy world, but the time period and the land and the world and the conflicts that you're in span so much more time than just the pages of my book. That there was a history to these people, and that they know that history, that they weren't just plopped into my world at page 1, but that this has been going on far longer than the reader knows. And I think that George R.R. Martin does that beautifully in his books, that there's such a sense of history within his world that I really wanted to emulate in my own book. The 9th question is, who or what inspired you to write this book? And I already talked a little bit about my history, about what I'm studying in school, so that obviously inspired me. Just these works that I'm reading and the people that created them, the legends and stories that people came up with astound me. That's why I love to study them, and why I wanted to write Valor, to show those and to try my hand at getting in the minds of these people. seeing what it would be like to live where they lived, to think how they thought, and to see how their gods, their stories and myths and legends would be comforting, and you would call upon them in times of need because you truly did believe in them. I love that kind of stuff. So that definitely inspired me to write Valor. I would say a person who inspired me to write Valor would be my grandfather, my papa. And he has always supported me no matter what. And it's funny because he's a doctor. He was a doctor. He was a pediatrician. But he's one of the most creative men that I know. I call him a Renaissance man. If you don't know what a Renaissance man is, look it up. It's actually pretty cool. But a Renaissance man sort of is like a jack of all trades, can do a whole bunch of different things, generally within many different genres. Like, they know math and astronomy and English and Latin, which don't necessarily relate, but that they're masters in all of them. And my grandfather can pick up anything that he wants to try. He can see something on TV, think that it's interesting, read a book on it, and then do it. And I want to be like him. I am so inspired by him, and he believed in me. He said I could write this book, and I did, and it will be dedicated to him. He's my #1 inspiration. And the last question is, what else about your book might pique readers' interest? So I think my book, even though it is a quest and plot is obviously a huge component, I think that my book is mostly character-based. It's focused on these people that are going on this quest and their beliefs, their goals, their ambitions, their lives, and how they lived it and what their society looks like. And I think that my cast being as large as it is and having all of these different personalities, there really is someone who everyone relates to, who has problems similar to you, even though they're not living in the same time period as you. And I know I relate to all of them at different points in the story. I think that it's a book that talks about ambitions in life and being who you want to be, even if your society doesn't necessarily support that, or being who you want to be even if your society does support that, and how conformity is not necessarily a bad thing if you're happy with who you are. So I think it's just a book about self-discovery. Also, they have really cool weapons. I've got a lot of weapons. I've got a lot of different elements of Viking and Scandinavian culture, which are pretty cool. I know, obviously, if you've seen the Avengers, you know Thor and Loki, so those gods do come into my story. Those are Norse gods, and Norse mythology plays a huge part, which is so interesting, and actually people are having a little bit more interest in the subject currently. So that's in my book. Cool weapons are in my book. Battles, bloody scenes are in my book. I think it's something that we need more of. We need more quests and heroes that are sort of questionable, because if you end up reading my book, you'll see that not everything in Viking culture would be accepted in our culture today, but it really does stretch your imagination and your ability to understand people of different societies, to look at them and say that this is how they lived, this is what they believed, and their actions, while they may not seem ethical or moral to us now, were normal in their time. And I think that that's something really cool and interesting. So this has been the work in progress tag for my book Valor, and maybe I'll do it again for the next book I write, but I'm sure that's going to be a long way off. I would like to do some editing vlogs while I try to work on the second draft of Valor, and this is my first manuscript, obviously. I'm only 20 years old, so I still got a lot to learn, but I really want to document that journey with you guys, whoever you are, and have this to look back on when, you know, knock on wood, I'm a famous author one day with a whole bunch of books under my belt. I can look at this one on the shelf and say, yeah, I worked on that and I have it all documented. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!